Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Savannah Sellers, host of NBC News' Stay Tuned on Snapchat. This year alone, 47 million 18 to 29-year-olds are eligible to vote in this election. I'm excited to be here with 4 students living in very different parts of the country. We're going to hear how they've been engaging in this year's election, who they're paying attention to, and how they talk to their friends and family about politics. So let's get started. Guys, thank you so much for being here on this panel. I'm so excited to talk to you. Let's do some quick introductions, starting with you, Malik. Let's share where you're located, what school you go to, what grade you're in, and what you're looking forward to most when virtual learning and social distancing is over. Let's have a little fun with this. Go ahead.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm Malik Mercier. I'm a junior at Ithaca College, and currently I'm in Brooklyn doing remote learning. And when this is all over, I feel like I'm just very excited to go to a restaurant.
I'm Rebecca McKinney. I'm 18 years old. I go to Dominion High School and I live in Northern Virginia. And what I'm most excited to do is to go on an airplane. Who knew I would miss airplane food?
So I'm in Columbia, Tennessee, which is about an hour south of Nashville. I go to Spring Hill High School and I'm a senior. Out of everything that I'm looking forward to in the post-COVID world, I've got to say SEC football is at the top of the list. I am ready to get back in a football stadium. Y'all don't even know how much we live for football down here.
So my name is Cassia Ramel. I'm 17 and I'm located in Los Angeles, California. And I'm a senior at Daniel Pearl Magnet High School. And once everything opens up again, I'm so ready to leave the country. I want to go travel so badly.
All right, so with the exception of Cassia, and that's only because she's 17 years old, I know for the 3 of you, Jackson, Malik, Rebecca, this will be your first time voting in a presidential election. So as we get started, I just want to ask you guys a little bit about where you lean politically, or you can say that you don't want to share, also totally fine. Raise your hand if you are liberal leaning. And what about conservative? And who doesn't want to share? Okay, great. So everybody got to raise their hand. So I'm happy that we have this mix of viewpoints on this panel. I think it's really important that we continue to have these conversations with each other across the aisle. And let's talk about how you are talking about politics and about the election with your peers, if at all.
For me personally, since I cannot vote in this election, it's so important to me to reach out to people who are first-time voters, people at my school, also my teachers and any adults I'm nearby. So all the time I'm starting conversations about getting registered and looking up your local and state elections, not just presidential, as well as holding voter registration drives or making events to convince people to get more politically involved.
Now, I have the stigma of being the politician of the school. I know everybody knows that I'm the political kid. So I actually have had people seeking me out to have conversations, and I think that's super cool. There's a lot of energy around this election, and I know I've done my part to, tell people when they come to me, they're wanting to talk about the presidential race. But like Cassia said, telling them about their local and their state races, because those are so important too.
Jackson, I love that you're known as the politician. That's pretty cool. Malik or Rebecca, what about you guys talking with your peers?
Yeah, I just want to sort of go off of that. I think I've been hosting a show called Internet Expert over at GBH News, the PBS Boston affiliate. And so it's been really fun to sort of help young people understand the democratic process through sort of fun challenges that are all digital and online. And I find that sort of making it fun and making fun sometimes of political websites that are kind of boring and just sort of having fun with it and being really light with it, I think sort of gets people involved more in just understanding the process, and hopefully that turns out to be helpful in youth voter turnout.
Yeah, and I would just add to that by saying social media has become a huge outlet in terms of talking about state, local, and the federal election coming up, and some of the current events that we're seeing. So talking to my friends over text and FaceTime and over Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok even too. So I think that social media has really contributed into the way that I would say most everybody talks about politics these days.
Tell me a little bit about where you guys are getting your information, how you know it's credible, and where your friends are getting it, and if you're ever having to kind of dispute something that they're telling you they heard.
I think that a lot of the media that we consume, is kind of tailored by us with social media to what we want to hear. And I think that that's created a little bit of a problem in the modern era. And I think that it's really important that we get our news from both sides of the aisle.
I feel like the TikTok specifically has, really had this political discourse, as you said. And I think that what I've seen is that before in 2018, I feel like there was this, especially with the surgence of the March for Our Lives, this real strong idea that we were not going to, as young voters, go by a party, but instead we were going to go by policy.
What do you guys think that the presidential candidates should be doing to address this division that we're seeing in our country right now that feels really bad?
In these upcoming 4 years, it doesn't matter who wins. Whatever president is able to say, you know what, it's not about my ego, it's not about me, it's about making our country better for everybody and being able to have the conversations across the aisle.
I completely agree with Rebecca, and I think the presidential candidates should foster a community between the American people. We should all be feeling accepted and acknowledged for having our different viewpoints, and also come to a middle ground about improving our society, improving our community, and building a better country.
I was texting a friend about the first presidential debate, and he said to me that the debate wasn't about America. And I feel like that is such a resounding message, that it just wasn't about people and the policy and how it impacts people's lives on the ground, which I feel like really, really matters, especially in this moment where there are so many people unemployed, so many people that are suffering. And so I think when we can get to a place where we're actually having a conversation about the humanity of all of these different issues and how it's impacting people, that'll be a really good thing.
And I'd love to hear what you guys think about where your generation lies within this division. Like, do you guys have friends that have different political viewpoints than you that you're discussing this election, that you're discussing politics with? And if so, how do you do so in a way that doesn't turn into a screaming match like you guys described?
One of my closest friends, she is completely on the other side of the aisle, and we have great discussions, and they're informative, and we respect each other's side, and that's great. But I've also had friends well, they're no longer my friends now, but they've told me that I should be ashamed of myself because my mom was born in another country and that I am voting for Trump and that I am Hispanic. I should be embarrassed to be Hispanic and voting for Trump.
A lot of times I run into situations where I've had these beliefs, and then I personally have gotten attacked for it. And like for my club that I have for Black Student Union, I've gotten like anti-Black like comments back on it, and then like, yeah, we're gonna start a all-white club that Black people can't be in, and I'm like, I'm trying to foster a community on campus. However, like, I have to draw a line between like, I respect your views, and to the point where you're disrespecting me and almost harmful to the people I've welcomed here.
And I've had people who, are no longer my friend because of how I lean politically. I think that, it made me reconsider, what is a friend? Because, if a friend is willing to, turn on you and stab you in the back because you're voting for the other candidate, were they really a friend to begin with?
What are the issues that really matter to you guys, and how are you following them? How are you talking about them with your friends?
The single biggest issue for me right now is our federal court system. I'm very conservative, so I really like some of the judges and the justices that President Trump has put in our federal courts. That's a generational change.
I've been really concerned personally about mental health. I have OCD and anxiety, and I feel like that's just such a huge issue that gets overlooked at a lot of these debates. And I feel like it's something that our generation really cares about, possibly because our mental health just hasn't been that great with everything going on, a pandemic, just so many different things that happen. I think school's just been more stressful, and there's so many different people that are struggling all across the country. And I feel like that's something that really should be top of mind. And then I've also, of course, has been mentioned, looking at just sort of justice-oriented issues like race issues like we've seen, and just the amount of protest and everything that's been happening. It's not that it's just like one isolated incident and then people, I think, could move on. It's like we need to have a revolution because there is like no like freedom or fairness in the system that we currently have.
It's so hard to name one top thing that I'm concerned about for the election. I mean, there's climate justice and the Green New Deal, opening up green jobs and cutting down fracking and fossil fuels. There's also racial issues, and systematically, there's so many areas in this country which I would hope for improvement.
Who influenced you in your political party? Did you kind of figure it out for yourself? Was it your parents? Was it a sibling? And what do you think is true for your friends?
Yeah, sure. I would have to say my mom, because I think from when I was in middle school or 11 years old, my mom had me going with her to lobby on Capitol Hill and take me to different galas and events, and just getting involved from such a young age that really helped me form my love for the American like political system and for our democracy that we have. That's so awesome.
And for me personally, I think I have to owe it all to my sister and one of my friends as well, because they got me into the political spectrum and they really educated me and brought me to rallies and talked to senators. So I could understand what I'm going into. And as a youth, I think it's so important to be educated now, even if you are 14, 15 years old, because our politicians are shaping the world that we are going to live in and the world that we are going to pass laws and vote on. And it's so important to get involved, even at this point.
The people who have influenced my political leanings the most are some folks that have been dead for a couple hundred years. All of our founding fathers, John Locke, I'm a big fan of John Locke's writings. Montesquieu, all of the classical thinkers.
I feel like, especially for me, there are so many news stories that make me very sad and emotional, or they can make me happy, but I feel like the ones that like really are monumental in our country, like the Sandy Hook school shooting, for example. I think we were talking about satire that day, and our teacher was supposed to teach that, and she was just like, there is no way I can teach this lesson today. And she just started crying in front of our middle school class, and she said, make sure you make this world better than when you came into it. And I've just always kept that with me. And I think that motivates me to continue to get into politics and to talk about it and to talk about the issues, because it really impacts people's lives and whether we live or die in some cases. And so I think that that's just really important.
Okay, my last question is $1 million question, because we're all wondering. So I want to know, from what you guys are hearing, from what you're seeing in your schools, how your friends are feeling, do you think Gen Z is going to show up at the polls?
100 billion% they're going to show up at the polls. I mean, like I was saying earlier, I can log on to every single social media site. Even on Quizlet, you can register to vote right from Quizlet.
Like Rebecca said, everywhere you can sort of register to vote. It's everywhere. And I think that, again, with all of the issues, like I think people are going to have reasons that they're voting more than ever. And I think that is so cool. And go vote.
I love you guys. You have so much wisdom for your years. And I just think it's so, again, inspiring and hopeful. I mean, we just had this conversation with all of you who identified differently on the political spectrum, and we were just able to have this fantastic conversation together, which again is something that is not necessarily happening with a lot of people who are a lot older than you guys. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for sharing what you're feeling about this election. For those of you who are voting for the first time, enjoy it. And Cassia, you'll be right behind them.
Soon.
Thank you guys so much for your time. I so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Woo!
Thank you so much.